Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That is spelled, of course, A-M-P-I-R-E. It is always much appreciated when you tune in. Today, I'm joined by my longtime friend and colleague, Liz Clarke from the Washington Post. Liz is retiring after a long career in journalism and a very, very good career in journalism. And she, of course, has been at the forefront of the biggest story on the Commander's beat over the last few years, and that's the investigations into Dan Snyder. She was part of the initial reporting with the Washington Post that brought all these stories to the forefront. So I wanted to have her on as she wraps up her career, just a little bit what she's going into her retirement, but also about this franchise, of course. The heavy amount of time was spent on this franchise. So we talk about her reporting. Was she surprised by the impact of all that and where it eventually has gone to? We talk a little bit about the sale. I will be honest, I think it's okay to say sometimes you don't know all that's going on, because I don't know that everybody has followed that rule. So Liz and I both kind of agree that there's still a lot of unknowns in this whole situation. So we get into all that, and we talk about her time on the beat. She did cover a couple different times, the end of the North Turner era, and then also some of the Jay Gruden era. So we talk a lot about that. And there you go. So stay tuned for that. And just real briefly, because there's still every week you're going to get more and more stuff coming out about possible ownership, possible Jeff Bezos, all that stuff. It's just a reminder to be careful with how you process all the information. And, there is a tendency by some to try to draw these conclusions based on something that maybe happened a while ago. For example, when there was the talk about, well, the Snyders cleaned out their office, therefore sale is imminent. Well, they cleaned out their offices in December. So that did not mean a sale was imminent at the end of March. It was just, I don't know why that was tried to be tied together. So just be careful with all that. And here's what we know about Jeff Bezos. From the beginning, this has been the same statements. What we've always heard is he does have interest in owning a football team. We don't know if it'll be this one. We do know that his presence still lurks, that other groups still know that he's out there, because as one told me, that until if Bezos has had chances to come out and say he's not interested. Well, he hasn't done that. And because he hasn't done that, these groups know that at any point they know he could try to get in deeper into this situation. We also know that the Snyders certainly don't have a lot of love for him. We also know everybody's got a price. So what is that price? Is there a quote unquote tax on Bezos just because of that situation? Don't know. I'll be honest. I don't know if there is. I do. Like I said, I know that there was some certainly bad feelings. Has that changed? And again, what could change their minds in this situation? How much could change their minds? Then there was a report by Puck that said that Snyder and Bezos spoke over the holidays. Okay, which is interesting, right? It's interesting. However, what we know since that time, first of all, we don't know what they talked about. So that's, and I'm not blaming a report on that. We don't know. What's the context of that conversation? Is it akin to a team calling up another team and saying, hey, if let's say Pittsburgh called up about Washington and said, hey, we want to trade for John Allen, and they said no. Well, then a report could come out saying they talked about John Allen. Well, they really didn't. One team called up and said, and the other team said no. So in other words, I don't know the context. So it's hard to really say what did that really mean. But what we know since then is that the Bezos side felt like, and this is as of late February, that they were being blocked from the bidding and being able to bid on this team. So, something that happened in December, I don't know how much it really goes now, but does it speak to the fact that they're willing to do that? If it ever got back to that, I don't know. That's the part I don't know. So I want to be clear on that. And I think you need to understand what all is going on. And then, just be careful. And I'll continue to say this, just be careful with how you're processing and always question, why is this coming out? What makes sense here? Why is this name, whatever it is, being floated? Or why is this report coming out now? What is the purpose behind it? I think you always have to ask that question. Anyway, that's enough. In other words, I just said, there's really nothing, I don't have anything new to report. It's just, I just want to provide a reminder on some of that stuff. And there you go. So that's it for me. So let's get to my conversation with the Washington Post, Liz Clarke, who is retiring after a long and very excellent career. We talk a lot about her reporting on the Washington Commanders and where the team is at right now. Did you know the largest ropes course and zipline park in the country is right here in the DMV? Located in the heart of Montgomery County, the Adventure Park at Sandy Spring combines climbing and ziplining to create an aerial obstacle course unlike any other. With challenges anywhere from 10 to 75 feet in the air, there is something for all skill levels. Looking for some family time or the perfect date night before football season starts? You can even climb and zip line under the stars. Would you rather keep your feet on the ground? Give axe throwing a try. With their projector systems, you can throw at traditional targets, play tic-tac-toe, connect four, or even hunt zombies. Listeners of this show can get $5 off any ticket by entering the code KEIM23DC at checkout. That's KEIM, KEIM 23DC. So there you have it, folks. Climbing, ziplining, axes, food, and bonfires right in your backyard. The weather is warming up, so it's the perfect time to head outside and join the adventure at www.theadventurepark.com. That's www.theadventurepark.com and enter promo code KEIM23DC. Well, Liz, it's always good to see you. And I do want to start with a big time congratulations on the retirement. Well earned. One of the most respected reporters in this area, which means in the country. So just because of the work you've done over the years in many, many different ways. I mean, I don't think people realize, maybe they do, but just all that you've done. And it's not just on this, like NASCAR, you were an expert there. I mean, all the stuff. And so I am curious at this point, because this is the last week.
Yes.
What does it feel like to know that, that you're retiring?
Well, first of all, way too kind of an introduction. Thank you as ever. It's always wonderful to see you, whether shared press boxes, shared workrooms, or Zoom. And it's been, I've been a sports writer. Well, no, I've been a journalist, a newspaper journalist for 37 years, and a sports writer more than 30, and then the last 25 at the Post, at the Washington Post, which was always my dream. As a young person, I really worshiped the paper, and that was where I wanted to be. So I still pinch myself that they let me walk through the door and work there and give me the chance to cover not only the NFL team here in Washington, but whatever sport comes up, except, just a few that I'm terrible at. I try hard at everything, so I'm always up to try. But it feels great that this is the last week. I started planning this in 2021. I'm now 62 and a half, and I'm also insulin dependent diabetic and have been for more than half my life. And it's a challenge that I've always managed, but it's harder to manage, particularly amid stress and lack of sleep and as you age. And, the calculus of kind of what truly matters has shifted in my life in a way that I didn't expect. I used to think they will have to kick me to the curb, at the Post, and whatever is the most menial job, I will happily do it, until I can work no longer. But, the pandemic came, I don't know about you, but I've lost several friends, dear friends, many in journalism, before they were 65, but some before they were 60, way too soon. And lost both my parents. And, you kind of realize at some point there's more of life behind you than there
Right.
is ahead of you.
Right.
And I really want this last third to count and to matter and be challenging and interesting. And not just, I'm not picturing, oh, now I move to the recliner for the next couple decades. I have passions and interests that have nothing to do with sports, and I really want to pursue them. Travel, theater, arts, museums. I love Washington. I've always wanted to retire here in Washington because there's so much to do.
Yeah.
So I'm super excited. Friends tell me, it's going to be emotionally very hard because you sort of lose your identity and your purpose and your structure, and all that makes sense. And that's probably true, but I really welcome all that.
Right.
I don't mind fading to black overnight and no one answering my calls anymore, and and just pursuing things that I haven't had the chance to. So sorry for the huge epic answer.
It's a
And
big deal, though.
it's a big deal, yes, but how lucky am I? I mean, I'm just overwhelmed with feelings of gratitude. Not only, first, above all, that I got to work my entire life in the profession I hold in highest esteem. And I know for many that's education or
Right.
medicine or law enforcement. There's so many wonderful callings. Mine has always been journalism, the thing I held in highest esteem and wish that I could do. So not only to be able to work in the field I wanted to, but at the paper I held in the highest regard, to learn from people, both younger and older. At every turn, I learned from my coworkers. And then to kind of, depart on my own terms, which rarely happens
Rare.
in sports. And it doesn't happen often in journalism and sadly in life. So I feel nothing but gratitude and a little sense of, gee, I wish I could have finished this story or brought this to a conclusion, or but that's good. That there's so many great talented people at the Post who have new energy and new ideas, and everything will get covered without me for sure.
Well,
So
and I do want to get to the big story, obviously, over the last couple of years is the Dan Snyder stuff. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, because that's a big deal. And that's a hell of a way to go out for you, et cetera. But how long, trying to remember what years you covered the team, because there were a couple different stints that you had.
yeah,
And I've lost track. Like Mike Jones told me how long ago he had been on the beat. I'm like, oh my God, it doesn't feel like
yeah,
it's been that long. But what
yeah,
were your year? I know it was like late
yeah.
90s, early 2000s. What were the years that you covered?
Yeah, no. It is kind of funny because it was a bit unorthodox, and maybe like you, I have zero sense of elapsed time at this age. It's like things could have happened 3 years ago or 15. I have no idea. But my first year on the beat was the last year of the Cook ownership, right? Jack Kent Cook had died. John was running it, but it was clear it was for sale. So that whole year was the sale year. So that would have been 1990. You'd think I would know this.
It was sold in 99.
Right, sold in 99. So this was the 98 season.
Okay.
It was so Norv Turner was the coach,
Right.
and you were obviously in the
A little
press
bit
room, and
younger.
I'm so delighted to meet you. So I covered the team for 4 years. The last year of the Cook ownership, the first 3 years of Dan Snyder's ownership. And in that time, I think there were 5 coaches, so it was Norv, Rabisky, Marty Schottenheimer. I'm exaggerating because I left the day Spurrier came in the door. I remember meeting him,
Okay.
I was leaving the beat. And then I was off the beat for 13 years covering other things, but would drop back in when there would be some interesting big news event like the return of Coach Gibbs.
Right.
We obviously had a lot of people come back and write about his return and what it meant. So I always, paid attention, I guess,
Right.
in case I were needed. But then I came back as a beat writer in 2014, which was Jay Gruden's,
Right.
I believe, second year.
First year.
No, was it?
Yeah, his first year was 2014. Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
It was, of course, because the Shanahan thing had all
Right.
fallen apart in 2013, and I was not on the beat, but I was intrigued. And Robert Griffin, I
Right.
think, was in his second year. So yes, so 2014, and then I was there for 4 more years to 2017.
Okay. So there you go. So let's
Sorry
go back.
to
Let's
be so
go back.
long-winded.
No, it's, but because you were there, I mean, what do you remember from those early years of Dan Snyder? And did you see things that you say, this is going to be a problem for the franchise under him?
No, I mean, I think we all remember the sales process was fairly fraught, because the choice was Howard Milstein,
Right.
and then that didn't fly with the NFL. So, there was a little bit of chaos and confusion about who was going to own the team and then who were the owners. And it was a kind of curious group of 3. And, we all know the way Dan Snyder presented himself to the market at age 34 as just a super enthusiastic, lifelong fan. And, who wouldn't love that narrative and kind of root for a hometown guy, self-made guy, to take ownership. So, complete open mind. And I think, I had no unique insight that you didn't have, and you probably had them before I did. But I think it was really excuse me. The first really troubling thing to me was his statement, was going to make no changes. And then within months,
Right.
Charlie Casserly's gone, boom.
A bunch of staffers.
Yeah, about 30 staffers. I mean, loyal, true staffers. To what purpose I did not see. I don't think any of us saw the point of that. And so that was sad, very disruptive. But then I think maybe there was a deeper level of concern his second year, which was the real aggressive, let me bring in every free agent I've ever heard of with a big resume, big ticket. And the optimistic side of you might say, wow, this is a guy who wants it now. He wants it all. He wants to win. Amazing. But if you know anything about team sports, you immediately think, what is this going to do to the chemistry? I mean, can one locker room truly absorb Deion Sanders, Bruce Smith? Was it Mark Carrier?
Yeah.
You're going to have to help me.
Jeff George came in.
And you could see individually the appeal of each, like, oh yeah, but then you have to think, well, what do you do with Champ Bailey? He's like the star of the future. And then you've got Darryl Green. You sort of go position by position and say, this might be more problematic than it seems. Like, for example, Brad Johnson, not the sexiest guy in the world in terms of he's going to sell tickets, not a politician. But like, what a beast of a guy. I mean, in terms of commanding the respect of the offensive line, getting the job done, not about ego, just a leader. And I don't think, I can see marketing wise why you might think the guy with the flashy arm was a better choice, but it wasn't a better choice. So anyway, I'm recapitulating probably painful memories for older people, and younger people are saying, what? So it was basically enthusiasm that was not constructive. And then I think every August, the media and the market thought, well, he's matured. He's learned. This is the year. It's going to, hands off, bring in the right football people, leave it alone, and let's wait for a winner. And the cycle kept repeating, in my view.
It did. And it's funny because also during that time, it was listening to outside people about players they should bring in, like a Jeff George, and having the football people inside saying, can't do it. And then eventually he would say, you have to do it. And I think that was also set a tone. But the other thing I remember, Liz, too, and again, I want to get to the big story in a minute, but the other thing I remember, and this is where I like, oh my God, her instincts are really good, because remember the year they fired Marty, it was Spurrier resigned and Marty hadn't been fired yet, and they finished really strong. I remember you and I in the press room.
yeah.
You looked up at the TV and you saw him resign. You go, he's coming here right away. You said, I'm like, oh no, because Marty, they finished strong.
Right. Marty was like 5-0 to finish,
yeah, right.
Completely turned it around.
Right. And so, but you right away, like, he's going to go get him. And I'm like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, boom, they did. It's like, always trust his instincts, because it was dead on, and they went and got him. Yeah. So
yeah. And boy, I remember, I wish I could remember the player. There was one offensive lineman, really admirable guy with young kids, and I believe had played for Marty before and had come all this way to play for him again. And you may have been with me. We had to tell him that Marty was going to be fired. I mean, not that it was our job, but it was, he had not heard. And it was so preposterous that an owner would make that move after the team had gone through so much that year. Did they not start 0-5?
They were 0-5, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of dissension because he was law and order. It's going to be this way. And but got a cohort of believers, and they were on their way. And this guy was like in the process of, the moving trucks were coming to bring his family. And we were like, just check those moving trucks. I don't think we said he's going to be fired, but just like, maybe you should hold off on the move because, we're hearing there might be a change. And I could just see in his face, the reporters don't know what they're talking about, but please don't let this be true.
Yeah.
And
and it was a bizarre time, but again, it also, to me, kind of foreshadows everything that's happened since, in other words, the lack of success for the organization. But the other stuff, like in the reporting, when you started working on the story, did you because like I said, you covered this franchise 2 different stints, you're very familiar with it. How surprised were you at the depths of what you discovered or reported?
You mean in terms of
all the stuff that's
pervasive sexual harassment,
all that stuff,
female employees,
and just the workplace culture, and then where all that stuff led to financial issues and et cetera.
Boy, that's really hard.
Were you surprised by any of that, or maybe that's a hard way to answer it? Like,
it's on some level. Yeah, I was really heartbroken, to be honest. I was just heartbroken because the people most affected were young women in their 20s and 30s for whom this was not only a first job out of college, it was their dream job, and in many ways they were more credentialed than their male cohorts. A lot had, advanced degrees in sports management, and they were very ambitious and just thought, oh my God, or they had been interns and got their foothold in an NFL team. I mean, who wouldn't be just so thrilled? Your family's thrilled. Like you could be the first female GM or something. And to just be so debased and degraded, I just could not believe it when I saw the text and the messages like, hey, we've got a bet going here, are your boobs fake or real? And like that, stuff like that, just crude crap bar talk that I was several decades older, but in no point in my life, no newspaper, no workplace had I ever been subject to treatment like that. And yeah, I know what a football team or what a male-dominated workplace is. That's actually where I've worked the last 30 years, male-dominated workplaces. But nobody speaks to me like that. And if they do, it's their last time, But see, anybody who would treat me that way, they're not my boss. They're people I cover. So it's a power dynamic that these young women were at the bottom of the pecking order. And it's like, you complain about your boss and like, there's the door. I mean, they had no HR department. They had no recourse. It was like, horrendous behavior from, you think of the 1950s, that I couldn't believe it, even though I had worked in that building at least 4 of the years with almost free reign in that building. And then the second iteration, we weren't in the building, but the locker room was our workplace. No players disrespected me or other women that I knew of. And to be clear, really none of these allegations were against players. It was against, the staff. No, it was heartrending. But, as far as who's responsible, who signed off, who looked the other way, who thought it was a joke, who laughed along, I think any of us who covered the team, who covers any team, there's a whole layer of stuff that you don't report. And I'm not saying you sit on to protect people. I'm saying maybe it's something prurient, lewd, or that's somebody's personal business. It's like that's their personal life. Or you can't get it confirmed to a publishable standard. I mean, those are the two categories. To be clear, I'm not talking about, we knew it, but we just wanted the free meals and to sit in the press box. So we went along. That was not it at all.
It takes someone speaking up.
Yeah. I mean, there was one scout who, said incredibly inappropriate things to me. But I handled it myself. It was, but I'm older. I have a thick hide. He's not my boss. He's not my superior. And I handled it the way I always handle, anybody who comes at me. And that's my personal business. But
were you surprised at the impact because going from the first story, this first series of articles that you guys had in July of 2020 to where we are now, are you surprised at the impact of those stories? When you're reporting them, are you even thinking that, or you just say, hey, this is a story, we're going to report this, we're going to report this out, and where it goes, but are you surprised at all the impact that those initial stories have had?
No. So no, I'm not thinking about the impact. At the time we're reporting and I'm meeting with these women, not all were women. Some were men who were really tortured and their work lives were made a misery. And I felt the importance of the work was to give them a voice, was to shine a spotlight on workplace behavior that was inappropriate. And to make sure that they knew this is not a normal workplace. You shouldn't go to work expecting to be treated this way. So, I mean, to the extent I saw a greater purpose, it was their stories deserve to be told, right? And I think we both know the NFL will do what it's going to do, and it doesn't necessarily do things because they're morally right. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. It responds. That's how that works. The impact to me was super important for the victims, for having their stories told. That's important. But Congress got involved, and that moved the narrative. That uncovered a lot that we didn't have. A lot we did have, but because of the way the NFL handled it, we wrote a set of stories. The NFL launched an investigation by Beth Wilkinson, and it chose not to make that public. So it was the fact that the NFL sat on those findings that triggered Congress's involvement. Like the NFL was the lever that made that happen, combined with the release of the incredibly offensive emails that cost John Gruden his career, reflected horribly on Bruce Allen. Whoever thought that was a good strategy, and I think, I'm quite sure I know, and I think smart people have theories. It's never been proven. Whoever thought that was a good strategy did not work that way, because that also piqued Congress's interest. So there's that. And then that led to the round table at which a new allegation was made against Dan Snyder personally. And then there's a second investigation. I am not sure to the extent Dan Snyder is selling this team. And there are days I wonder about that. There's a serious debt issue here with this team. And Jerry Jones was the first to make that public. Mm-hmm. This is not me making that public. As your reader or listeners know, all NFL teams have a debt ceiling. You can borrow up to X amount. It's right. About, it's a lot. It's about 500 million or 600.
Yeah. I think it's 500. Yeah.
500. Yeah. And 2 years ago, the NFL gave Dan Snyder special permission to exceed that by $450 million. So that puts him at about $1 billion, assuming he's already at the debt ceiling.
Right.
To be clear, he didn't borrow that from the NFL. He borrowed it from a bank.
Right.
But and people thought, wow, the NFL just made him very strong. He's stronger than ever. He owns the whole team now. Yes, but he has to pay off that money. So the debt is going to come due, and he has to get back into NFL compliance. He has to get back under that waiver. And this coincides with the time that local revenue is cratering. They've gone from first to 32nd in attendance. They've reduced the size of the stadium 3 times. The suites are hardly leased in full. We can see sponsors that have gone away. I don't know of many NFL teams that don't have a beer sponsor. I mean, that's kind of shocking in itself. Mm-hmm. We can't say, here's the number of his local revenue, but it is cratered. I mean, by the metrics we can see. So this is not a good time to be digging your way out of debt. So selling 20% of the team would enable him to get out of the debt. And, our understanding is he tried to find someone willing to do that and he couldn't.
Right.
So, is his only option to sell all the team. And this dance has been going on for 5 months now.
Yeah.
It's still not clear. And it's not clear to the NFL, and it's not clear to buyers or bidders. So it's the most inscrutable NFL sales process, hands down.
I had talked to someone who said that they haven't been through a process like this one.
Correct.
And a lot of it is that, because Dan is fully in control of it, and they only know what they're told by him or his people. So, but are you surprised though? Because, throughout all this, you kept hearing, not going to vote him out, not going to do this, not going to do that. And then there was that big shift in November. Were you surprised it got to that point, or did you kind of wonder or think that it would get to this point that he's going to have, and a lot of it goes back, like you said, goes back to the debt. Like, you can't escape that. But are you surprised that it got to that point where the team actually is up for sale?
Totally surprised that that day in November, I think November 1st, when that first report came out, it's like, oh yeah, I was shocked. But macro, if you pay attention, it's clear that politically, no entity is going to do a land deal with Dan Snyder for a new stadium at this moment. If you know anything about the economics of an NFL team, it matters not how bad your team is. If you build a new stadium, it's like, you print money. You have to have a good product to sustain that. But, a new stadium is an economic engine for the value of the franchise, for the enthusiasm of the fan base. I mean, the one thing that, to me, and I've been thinking this for the last 5 years, that could possibly re-energize fans, bring back excitement, was a new stadium, at the RFK site, that's accessible to Metro, that that is exciting to young people, not in the suburbs, but that it would be a game changer. And, sort of matters not who owns the team, but that in itself, it would just be, the city would be joyful, I think, in knowing the city. But then it became, as the optics, the defrauding of fans, the list is very long of the ways in which politicians got fed up with wanting to be associated with the team. I don't see how Dan Snyder gets a new stadium built. So I always thought he's either got to, something had to change, because you've got to have a new stadium. You've got to have a new stadium. And ideally you'd have it next year. If right now to think 2026, 2027, that seems so forever away. That's way too long away.
How much a difference do you, because I still think like RFK is going to be, there are still roadblocks there. I think,
and
I think they're going to have a hard time going there, but how much of a difference will a new owner make just for this franchise, for the fan base? Is it enough to just do that? Or do you wonder if that so much of it has been killed, the enthusiasm, the joy, that it's going to be hard to get that back? Will a new owner be the difference?
Oh, I don't want to sound Pollyanna, but, I do think, I do think the market would be thrilled with a new owner. I just feel a pent up demand to embrace a team, and we've seen fans migrate to the Caps, to the Nets, to other places. That's great for the city. Diversified interest is great, but I don't think it's gone forever. I mean, I think the challenge is the NFL is facing some challenges, with you want to keep having a younger fan base. So that to me is a big part of why you want a downtown stadium, an urban stadium with cool bars and restaurants, and make it a destination and fun things to do. To me, it would be, if I had limitless money, it would be the easiest win of all time, if money were no object, because, they're last by almost every metric. So you'll be embraced. You've got to make the product really great. I'm not discounting that, but no, I think it's you can get it all back, but half measures won't do. I think Dan selling 20% of the team and is not going to cut it.
And I don't think the other owners,
even if it solves a lot of financial problems,
and the other owners,
that's not the fix here,
and the other owners would have to approve that, and there's no chance of that too. That would be do you think so? Let's go back to RFK. We only got about 5 minutes left, but RFK,
I'm so sorry, I talked.
No, that's okay. That's okay. Is RFK a viable site, or do you think it's going to be one where, as some people have suggested to me, that you're going to have to try because that's what the fan base wants, but you're going to find that it's going to be very difficult?
Of course it's going to be difficult. Of course it's going to be difficult. Yeah, it's federal land. It's the National Park Service, controls it. So first, the federal government has to either sell or cede it or give it to DC. And there's been a bill that Eleanor Holmes Norton has had for years to have that happen. So first of all, irrespective of football, DC should control this land. What is the fate of this land? So step one is that federal political thing. You need big time lobbyists to get that done. And then it would be the DC Council, which is a pretty strong-willed, complex body, to then decide, is this going to be used for public housing, for parks and green space? Are we going to make a billionaire owner richer? That's going to be a really fraught discussion. But yeah, it's certainly doable. There's a lot of people who support the idea. There will be a lot of people who say anything but I don't know any city that doesn't have a lot of anguish over the building of an NFL stadium or a big stadium. To me, that's the clear first choice.
It would be. I think that would be the massive win. I wonder about if there's so many obstacles and then
There's lots of
and then the
obstacles.
revenue split with it, like, who knows? But I think like that's got to be where you have to try first.
I would think
You
so.
exhaust all options
Yeah.
for it. And, there you go. And, the one thing I don't want to do and you don't want to do is sit there and try and play the horse race game with whoever's going to own the team. Because we don't, there's so much we just don't know in the story as far as where the sale goes, right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's anyone who is tweeting or blogging or reporting that, they have it all wired. This is what the bid is worth to the exact dollar figure, or these are the bidders, or here's the timetable. It's going to happen next week. Has a time. Anybody who has clarity on any of that, I question that. I'm not questioning their sincerity of their
Right.
reporting, but I think they're being fed a line that may not be agenda free, I guess. I mean, yeah, I don't know any of that. I mean,
last thing for you, Liz, we got 2 minutes. How does it for you going out? This has been a huge story. I mean, it's a seismic story that you've been covering and been a big part of. What's it like to basically end the career on this story?
oh gosh, no. I mean, it's I'll be reading as enthusiastically as anyone, and I will be reading the reporters I trust, which is you and Mark Maskey and Nikki Javala, and know that I mean, I live in DC. I love DC, and I really respect the fan base of this team, and I want good things to happen for them. So, my interest in the topic rolls right on. It's just I don't have my mitts in it, and that's quite welcome, because I don't think people understand, nor should they, how much stress and sleeplessness and constant fretting reporting stories like this are. It's just inescapable, and so that part I'm happy to set down.
Yes, I can understand that very well.
I know you can.
So I'm smiling because I can feel that freedom from that. So I'm very happy for you, very proud of, you should feel very proud of what you've done in your career. It's been awesome. And it was a pleasure working alongside you. And even for 1 month at the Post.
Yes, we were colleagues.
And it is funny, just real quick, because I got less than a minute here, but that was funny because I came on board. And the first time I saw you in the newsroom, you said, "Oh, congrats. I'm so happy to have you." I said, "Well, Liz, I'm actually in here turning in my computer because I'm done." So it was always good. But Liz, it's great. And I got about 30 seconds left. And I just want to tell you how much I appreciated your reporting over the years and was such a big fan. So thank you very much for coming on.
Right back at you. Big fan of the way you conduct yourself and the standard of your journalism. All class, all correct, all the time.
Thank you,
Thank
Liz.
you. Thank you.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Liz for joining me, and congrats to her on a great career. And thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back on Monday with ESPN's Greg McElroy as we discuss Sam Howell and some of the other quarterbacks in this draft, because, as Ron Rivera said, they are still looking at all possible scenarios. I know they like Howell. I do believe that he's the guy that's going to end up starting, but they did have Hendon Hooker, or they are having Hendon Hooker in for a visit. So what does it mean? What would Greg McElroy do? He's watched Howell a lot. He saw Hendon Hooker a lot. He's very familiar with all these quarterbacks. So I thought he'd be a good one to bring on and give you some insight, and we can get back to on-field talk. So there you go. I'll talk to you next time.